Via telephone. Well, wait, we didn't get to Matt. What would you be?
Scooby-Doo, I think. He's
Oh, well, you can't beat
right.
Scooby-Doo.
It's hard to beat. Yeah.
Ken Reed via telephone. Ken, good morning. How are you? Do we still have Ken? We had Ken.
Ken thought we'd ask him what he would be.
Yeah. Ken was there a minute ago.
Oh,
there you are.
I had you on mute.
You Joe Ferretti'd yourself.
I muted you people.
Yeah, a lot of people would like to do that. Yeah, that's kind of going around there.
Well, I had the power to do it, so I did it.
Yeah, well done, sir. Well played. Well played. Ferretti does that to me on some Fridays, so sometimes I think it's me doing it, and it wasn't this time.
Yeah, but most folks, Ken, would like for us to mute Rob and Matt and myself as opposed to muting you.
Not this time, though. Ken, if you were going to go to Comic-Con, what would you be?
Comic-Con? A good question. You know, it would have to be Batman.
See, that's what I said, too, right? Got to be Batman.
Just so you can say it, I am Batman.
When my oldest son was about, 2 or 3, he had a Batman costume, and it had the muscles, right, that Batman has, right? So we were going to the supermarket the one day, and he said, "Hold on a second." We're getting in the car. He goes, wait a second. He had his Batman cowls on, the hat. Yeah. And I said, "What?" He goes, "I got to go get my muscles." So he ran in to get the Batman muscles, put those on. We're walking around the supermarket, and this lady, who was older than us at the time, but probably younger than I am now, stopped us, and she said, "My son used to wear the same costume to the supermarket when he was little."
Nice.
So if you see a little Batman running around your supermarket.
With muscles.
Ken, you have been a Morgan County commissioner in the past, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. You are not any longer, correct?
No, I am not a commissioner anymore. I'm just out in the world, just working like everybody else does.
All right, very good. Now, this isn't what I obviously told you we were going to be talking about. Just a quick question. Have you been keeping up with the microgrid bill and the data center bill that the state has passed?
I have, to a small degree. I've been keeping up with that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's some objections from county commissioners, and Eddie Gokenauer was one of the first to speak out about it because the state is going to take 50% of the property taxes, the real estate taxes that come from these data centers. The county is going to get 30, and then an additional smaller percentage that's redistributed per capita around the state as well. Plus, the states, if you have a data center in your home county, the state overrides any local ordinances or zoning issues because they want all 55 counties to be uniform and what the zoning and requirements and such would be with the land. So it's going to negate any of the county ordinances and zoning rules for those who do have zoning. As a former county commissioner, do you have any thoughts on that bill as it will apply to counties?
Well, yeah. So I suppose that if your job is the county commission, your job is to look after your county. And as a county commissioner, I can't see a lot of county commissions liking that, mainly because you're splitting up your proceeds to the state. At the very most, they could have made any bills any potential businesses that were already in the works stay with the county, because I understand that Berkeley County had one in the works already.
Yes.
We used to complain a lot about the state making rules because they don't have to actually deal with them. When I was a county commissioner up in Morgan County, it happens all the time. We have to deal with the reality of the theory that comes out of Charleston.
Yeah, that's true. Does Morgan County have any particular types of zoning or ordinances in regards to businesses?
No, they don't. Years ago, Berkeley County turned it down years ago, but Morgan County definitely does not have any zoning at this point. Zoning is a good way to get ahead of potential problems. With the bypass up there in Morgan County, I suspect in probably the next 10 to 20 years, there's going to be a tremendous amount of growth up in Morgan County. So it may be something they want to look at if they want to try to preserve, what the essence of Morgan County is with the rural areas.
This legislative session, obviously you're not a member of the House of Delegates any longer, but when you were, you served on Health and we relied on you in many cases for expert opinions on some of the things that the House of Delegates and the Senate were dealing with. One of the things that failed this year that had a very big push, and they promised to come back to push it again next year, was try to expand vaccination exemptions. There was a discussion about religious exemptions, which West Virginia does not currently permit, and then philosophical exemptions were also going to be a part of that. You spoke against that during the legislative session with us, Ken, and that legislation did fail this time around. Do you have any comments on the failure of that legislation?
About the failure, every legislative session, it seems, for as long as I can remember, an anti-vaccine bill pops its head up. And usually one or the other houses end up being adults in the room and kills the bill. I was on health, and most people know that I'm actually an active pharmacist and working in the Eastern Panhandle, and know quite a bit about vaccines, how they work, and how they operate to protect the public, because this is a public health issue. It's not a liberty issue at all. It's a public health issue. And anytime you're spreading disease to somebody else, it becomes a problem. You don't have the right to do that. You just don't. The Supreme Court's ruled on this multiple times. So every year we go to battle over this issue, and the pro-anti-vax side always goes out and tries to find more people to vote for their view. Some of them, you have to break them down into true believers and just political people who are voting to for whatever reason, the deal they made or power to get in the position they're in. And slowly over time, they're slowly getting more and more people who will vote that direction for doing harm to the public when it comes to vaccines. I fought this since I was in the legislature, and even more so out of the legislature, because believe it or not, it unchains you a little bit when you're not in the legislature, because you do have to be a team player, and you do have to compromise. You have to do this and that. But as just somebody out in the public, general public, I'm not contributing near as much as I was when I was in there. So I can be a little more forceful in trying to get the truth out there how this stuff works. I guess to start, it's a very complex subject. Is one of the big problems. There's a lot of variables involved, but I think when you break down everything for the anti-vax side, it comes down to correlation versus causation. That group loves to take data and either manipulate it or misrepresent it or create a lot of assumptions out of a data set that just isn't there. So to give you an idea how to break this down, I had recently seen a little video of a woman talking about it, and I thought it was a great way to do it. So correlation is just when there's a relationship. It has nothing to do with actually what you're talking with, but it could be completely random. So on the East Coast, shark attacks are actually linked to ice cream sales. If you look at the graph of shark attacks versus ice cream sales, they're almost identical. It goes up and down almost perfectly. The problem is that there is no causation for the sale of ice cream and shark attacks. None. It usually has to do with the weather. One does not cause the other. But you can make the argument by looking at this fancy graph that almost overlaps each other that it is the same. And that is exactly what the anti-vax people do. They take these, and I'm bombarded sometimes with supposedly studies and stuff from people who have no expertise whatsoever in those fields, who are making these numbers look like it's caused there's a problem out there. And it's absolutely crazy to create policy on correlation. I mean, it's just, I don't understand why people keep trying to do that, but they do. So that's basically the issue with most of these, quote, studies that are out there. Most of them aren't studies. Most of them are just opinions by either anti-vax folks who grab data and try to put it in a way that makes their argument look good, or they're just trying to sell books. They're unfortunately, there are people out there who want to, get money off of these type of issues, and it's out there, and we got to deal with it.
Bill.
Yeah. Good morning, Ken. We see this in a host of fronts. So the climate change a few years ago, even though the vast majority of the credible atmospheric scientists saw a straight correlation between man-induced CO2 and the climate change, but yet there were one or two or three people that were generally they were not atmospheric chemists. They were geologists, something else. They would say that did not exist, and that was the one that the folks fighting against recognition of climate change were always using. I gather what you're saying, this is the same thing now with the vaccination, that frequently the individuals that are saying vaccination are actually the problem as opposed to the solution are ones that are not credible with their colleagues in the research community. Is that fair?
That is fair, and a lot of them it's also what the colleagues are. So to give your audience an idea of what so when somebody hands you or sends you this fancy argument that is a quote study, the first thing you really need to do is look at who is actually doing the argument or the book. Okay? So generally, you want experts. You want to be talking to experts. And in the vaccine, that's virologists, epidemiologists, microbiologists, somebody in infectious disease, or a medical doctor who specializes in immunology. Those are your expert sets. Those are the people who have spent their lifetime studying the nuance of very complex systems with viruses and microbes. What you don't want to listen to is somebody who is in a field that is medically related but has no expertise whatsoever in what they're trying to push on you. So that's the first thing you need to check is who is actually doing it. The second thing is to actually look at what the study is actually trying to achieve. Those studies that I recently was sent a couple studies, the studies that were sent to me were basically correlation things that were cherry-picked data, and the two actual studies that were sent, the goal was not to create an anti-vax sentiment, but it was actually the one study was basically how to financially track measles in a way that you're not tracking actually side effects from the vaccine. So I'm going to give you an example here. So when you get measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, 5% of those people who have that shot will end up with a rash. That rash is not measles. So there was a study out there that basically looked at genetic sequencing of people who were in the middle of a measles outbreak for that genetic sequence from the MMR vaccine. We wanted to find that because what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the people who just had the rash, because you don't want to spend time, money, and effort for a government to spend money they don't have trying to chase down false leads. And to move into the realm of taking those sequences to it's causing measles in California, these unvaccinated people, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd on what they were trying to push out there in the market. It comes down again to correlation versus causation. And we have to, as the public, have to understand that difference, because they're going to push that difference onto us, and you're going to basically be tricked is what it's going to come down to. Another study was thrown at me was basically, these mothers who had the MMR vaccines wasn't producing enough. It was a fake herd immunity type stuff. See, the problem with all that is that a lot of the immunoglobulins are actually passed through breast milk. And if you stop breastfeeding, you're not going to get those. The study doesn't say anything about that. You can't correlate the cause from these studies. And the other thing that these people do is they'll actually change words, and words have power. The one that I looked at, there was another one I looked at. The guy somebody was making an argument that there was an average a very young, like say 22, that was getting measles. But the problem is when you went back and looked at the original study, it doesn't use an average. It uses a median. And as most people know, there's a huge difference between an average number and a median number. So it's stuff like that you have to go back and look. And it comes down to, like I said, look at who's writing the study. Are they an expert in that field that they're talking about? And if they're not, just don't listen to them. The other thing is, and I'm going to throw this out there, is if you get a disclaimer right off the bat, I am not a doctor. I am not in the health profession. I am not a microbiologist. That's a dead stop right there, okay? These people don't know what they're talking about. They're basically just parroting something they heard that fits their narrative of what they want you to believe. So, like I said, in general, when I hear somebody say, well, I'm not in the healthcare community, I mean, that's pretty much telling me that you don't really know what you're talking about.
Matt Miller.
So, yeah.
I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. You need to laugh at that. There's a lot of that out there, and that is causing policy to be changed in our state. And it's funny, but it's not, that we've gotten to this point that people in Holiday Inns know things that we should change policy for, and you just shouldn't do that.
Ken, let me throw a scenario at you and get your reaction of how maybe it should be handled, and if this would be a case where there should be some sort of an exemption. And I do know that West Virginia does hold those medical exemptions that could happen. When I was a little fella, I just about got wiped out by, I believe my mom said it was the smallpox vaccination, where half my body swelled up larger than the other half, my fever shot through the roof. I remember even at that very young age being shoved into a bathtub full of ice water to help get that temperature to come down. It was a traumatic experience. So as I grow and I find that information out from my mom, I and my wife now have children. Should I be concerned, hey, can my child have a similar reaction to that smallpox vaccination? And now should I seek some sort of a medical exemption for that?
So that's actually an excellent question. And the answer is absolutely. All right. The one thing that did come out of the mess down in Charleston was the fact that our medical exemptions aren't working. The whole purpose of medical exemption is to screen out if you have some type of genetic predisposition or a family member that has issues before out of the process of getting those vaccines. Now, you specifically mentioned smallpox. All right, we no longer vaccinate for smallpox at all because we've eradicated that disease. Like all medications, it's risk versus benefit. Smallpox was so deadly that it killed so many people that the benefit of trying to vaccinate people to keep you alive far outweighed the risk of the rashes and the stuff, because that was indeed a live vaccine. I actually have the smallpox scar myself. That we eliminated that disease, and now there's only a couple spots in the world that actually have smallpox, and they've actually been trying to weaponize smallpox for years because it's so deadly. That also is true for other vaccines. Say if you have an actual problem with any of the vaccines, the measles, chickenpox, whatever, you definitely should not get the vaccine. The other day, a couple of people came in for measles boosters. All right, so let's get into the measles boosters. I've turned more people down getting shots lately than actually giving them. So there was a big push out there after the measles stuff. Well, I should get a booster. No, you don't. The recommendations for MMR are basically, if you have had one dose of MMR, you're good. You don't need a booster of MMR, even though the anti-vax people push out there saying your titers are low and all that kind of stuff. All you need is evidence of immunity. And the evidence of immunity takes in the natural, even if you got it naturally. If you received one dose of the measles-containing vaccine, you have evidence of immunity. You do not need a booster. If you have laboratory evidence of immunity, or you have confirmation of the disease, you're good. You don't need a booster. And if you were born before 1957, you're good. You've been exposed to the disease naturally. You don't need it. But you'll see this push out there. It's like, well, you need to get these titers done. You need to get boosters. No, you don't. You don't need that. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking as well. I'm trying to correlate in my mind how to ask as far as other vaccines. Like let me go back. When I was young, I had a terrible case of chickenpox, and so as I'm getting older, and I know shingles has become a big issue, and shingles is related to the chickenpox. Is that a type of vaccine that I should look to get as I get older because of something that I had when I was younger?
2 minutes, Ken.
The answer to your question is yes and no. That's your decision. Okay, so the only vaccines we force people to get are the childhood vaccines, and that is only to go to school. The chickenpox vaccine is completely up to you to get. I got it. I do not want shingles. I deal with people who walk in with shingles a lot, and you do not want that. That is extremely painful when that virus reemerges. So, again, there was a patient that came in the pharmacy wanting a booster of her shingle shots, but they've already had their 2 shots, and that's it. It's 2 per lifetime. You get 1, and then you get a booster 6 months later. That's it, and that's how you weed these people out. So the answer to your question is that's up to you. Do you want shingles? If you don't, I highly suggest you get the shingles vaccine.
My father-in-law had shingles, and that alone encouraged me to get the shingles shots.
My
when
doc.
you actually see a case of shingles, you don't want nothing to do with that.
I asked my doctor this question a few years ago. He said of the one vaccination for adults, he would suggest you get shingles because, again, in the elderly, a lot of the suicides are related to shingles. Because it's you get in. You do not get over them. It just keeps going and over. So I have shingles.
Oh yeah, it feels like you're on fire.
Don't want that. Ken, thanks so much. I appreciate the information this morning. I didn't get a chance to ask you about pharmacy benefit managers, and we're making any progress on that, so we'll save that for the next time.
Yeah, that's another little complex question, isn't it? But, I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys have a good day.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
That is Ken Reed as we take our break here, top of the hour.